excited.
Hello and welcome to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. This podcast comes from two lifelong fans of IndyCar and other forms of motorsports. Before we get started, let me introduce you to my co-host, Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy.
Hello, Dan.
How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm good. I'm excited. We got a couple of guests with us today. I'm
excited too.
about this.
Yeah.
So, and we've got a great discussion planned ahead, but let me introduce you to our guests. We have two special guests today. We have Brian Friedrich. I think most of you on Twitter know him by his handle at 500 Indy 1911. And our webmaster guru, Spencer Neff, IndyCar1909.com. Hey, Spencer. Hey, Brian.
How you doing?
It's good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you getting on and going to give us, going to add to, what Tim and I seem to be coming together with all these common thought processes. So it's going to be good to get some new info in here. So appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Sure. Hey, before we get too far into talking about qualifying, I think we need to send our thoughts and prayers to Stefan Wilson. Stefan had a coming together during today's practice at Indianapolis with Catherine Legg. Scary crash if you haven't seen it. I'm sure it's out there on the YouTube, and you can certainly see it on the Twitter feeds. But Catherine is so far okay. She was evaluated and released. However, Stefan Wilson is withdrawn from the Indianapolis 500 for next week. Not allowed because of a T12 fracture. So unfortunate for Stefan. That team, Bryan Reinbold, put together a great effort, this Indy-only effort, as they normally do. And unfortunately, Stefan won't be able to participate. Hopefully they'll get that car repaired and get somebody in that car. I know that the first bit of thought process immediately, because it's recency bias, is, well, maybe we could put Graham Rahal in there, but Graham is a Honda driver, so I doubt that Honda would allow him to jump into a Chevy powered vehicle. So guys, what do you think is who's the most likely candidate there? Brian?
Well, I think the natural kind of progression of it would go to either J.R. Hildebrand or even Sage Karam. Like in recent years, both have had experience with Bryan Reinbold. J.R. Hildebrand is on the grounds of IMS and has been for almost a week now. So I think that he would be a logical replacement for Stefan. But Sage Karam obviously comes to mind too, and he actually tweeted earlier last week that he was really missing IMS and missing that he wasn't there. So I think those two names kind of shoot to the top of the list. And if I personally had to choose between the two, which I think both would make sense, J.R. Hildebrand is a natural choice for me, not only because of his experience, but also his technical experience. It's going to be a backup car more than likely.
Yep.
So his setup input, his reaction to how the car feels, I think will be a little bit better than Sage's. So no offense to Sage, but J.R. Hildebrand's widely considered to be a genius in the paddock. So if I had to put my money on somebody, it would be J.R. Hildebrand to take over for Stefan, unfortunately.
I'd agree with that. Spencer, you like that choice? JR?
Yeah, obviously JR posted on social media that he was in Indy earlier last week. I don't know what Sage's NASCAR schedule is. And I don't know who else would kind of be mixed for this.
Fit that bill. I don't follow NASCAR well enough to even know what Sage, or even realize that Sage is in one of the NASCAR series. I'm assuming he's running in Xfinity, maybe a limited program there, but I didn't even know that. But yeah, I think J.R. Hildebrand, he's on property. He's in town. I think he's prepared physically to get in there and do it. And I think he's definitely a smart enough driver to get in there and, bring it home. So I think it's going to be difficult, right? Because they're going to have a older chassis and some backup parts, and they're going to try to put that car together the best they can and get them out there. So
Yeah, so it's from what I've heard, it's a 2-year-old car that has never been on the oval at Indy. And it's actually the car they used for pit stop practice that had a go-kart engine, like up until recently. So yeah, so it'll be a long haul just to get it back up to any type of competitive pace. So I don't necessarily foresee in it being, like any type of competitive car on Sunday. I think it'll be something very similar to what we saw with Colton Herta's car last year after he wrecked on Carb Day.
Yeah.
So,
Timmy, is that a better idea to put a backup in there, or withdraw the car? Even if put a backup in there and the car's going to potentially trundle around as a rolling chicane, or do you withdraw it?
Yeah, I think if you got a car and you got a sponsor and you got the funding, then I think you put it in there, right? If you look at what Herta did last year, it was miserable, right? After wrecking his car on the final practice there and trying to really be competitive, he wasn't competitive at all. So I think you do it for the sponsor's sake, if that's sort of how it lays out. But if that's not a concern, then maybe you withdraw altogether. But I think you're there on merit. I think you still want to be there and you still want to participate. It's the greatest spectacle in racing. So you got to be there.
It is.
And I like JR just because of the hair. That's my only reason.
Pit lane Jesus.
Well, I can add to this. Sorry for interrupting.
No.
I think that I was just thinking back to Hinch's crash back in 2015, which was on the Monday before the race. And I don't know what the chassis situation was at what was then Schmidt Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
But I know they got Briscoe qualified in the race. And I think he ended up finishing 12th, I want to say. So to that point, there's an opportunity to do well, right? As it's not a situation where it's all doom and gloom, right? There is a potential. If you're in the race, there's always the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, the deck's definitely stacked against them right now, so to speak, but things have happened.
Yeah, good point, Spence. We wish both Catherine and Stefan well. I neither of those teams need any additional drama or any additional work. I mean, we saw what the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team went through yesterday during bump day. And, I'm sure that they were just now catching their breath and their heart rates were just getting back to normal. And then now they've got to thrash and prepare an Indy 500 Challenger for, in 4 days. Hey, Juncos did it in 24 hours. So we know it can be done. And, hopefully Dreyer and Reinbold's a little different story because they're a one-off team. So we'll see how they do. And, we certainly wish them well. Want to see everybody out there. Field of 33. So on to qualifying, we always do this segment on our show where we do this big deal. And, is it a big deal, Tim, or is it a big deal? Cares. I would tell you, I'm gonna make that decision for all of it. Qualifying was a big deal.
Huge deal.
Huge deal yesterday. Yeah. And it's funny, I'm gonna start maybe in the reverse of what most people think how this would generally go, but I think you've got to address the elephant in the room, and that's what we were just talking about. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. This was a catastrophe, in my opinion. I don't think I've ever typed that word so many times in text or in writing up these notes and in different communications, but this was a catastrophe times 10. Let me give you a quick rundown and then we can talk about it. So Leg was added to this program as a fourth car. Frankly, she didn't have an issue getting up to speed necessarily as compared to her teammates. She was not fast, but she wasn't exactly slow either. She didn't have the drama. She qualified 30th. She didn't have to worry about that last row shootout. Lundgaard's pole and super solid finish at the Indy GP, in my opinion, completely lost, right? Completely overshadowed now by the fact that this roller coaster going from the high of the high last weekend at Indy GP to him getting ready to start his second Indy 500, and he's battling for last. for the last row with one other teammate or two other teammates and another team with Stingray Rob. So obviously not ideal. Jack Harvey, I've been saying for a while that Jack's not the problem. I'm wearing Jack's shirt again. Had to. All right. Jack is not the problem. Talent nor skill is a problem with Jack Harvey. I believe that 100%. I said that last week during our episode after the Indy GP that Jack deserves another season with Rahal Letterman Lanigan because they seemingly were getting things together. But then we come to this. And this really being, right, Graham Rahal not making the show. Now, let's face it, there's a lot of drivers, great drivers, many great drivers who haven't made this show. Team Penske didn't make this show the year after dominating the Indy 500 the year prior. And Graham's dad didn't make the show in 93, and he was the series defending champion. He wore the number 1 on his car at the same time that he didn't do it. So, guys, there's a lot to unpack there. Brian, I'm going to start with you. Rahal Letterman Lanigan, rock bottom. They should be okay rest of season, maybe not hot at the balance of the ovals, but okay at the rest of the season? Or is this off the rails now?
Well, every team would tell you that they want to win the Indy 500 first and the championship second. So from that perspective, it's off the rails. They hired Stefano Sordo from McLaren F1 to be their new technical director. So I think that hire was good in a sense on like the permanent road courses like we saw at Indy, where like Rahal kind of came out of nowhere. Like they won the pole, they qualified really well when they were struggling at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. So I think that the rewards of hiring Sordo from McLaren F1 were shown there. But the dichotomy of that is that literally 2 weeks later, all 4 cars were struggling just to make the Indy 500.
Yeah.
So,
Alan McDonald, right, is Jack Harvey's engineer. And Alan McDonald, the reason why I know that name is because Alan McDonald was the engineer that put Alex Tagliani in a Indy-only effort, I believe, on pole.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's definitely, I'm sure, within Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. And it wasn't a surprise. We saw it in practice. Graham Rahal was, as usual, very open and honest with the fact of the lack of speed they had. Mm-hmm. So I do think this might be, in a way, and my brother, I think, said it best, who's kind of a casual IndyCar fan and a, like casual Indy 500 fan, was that he hopes that like this is a kick in the ass, so to speak, to Rahal Letterman. Like, it's time to, like, let's go. Like,
I was looking for that kick in the ass to come from Texas, which I thought was
you
rock bottom.
Yeah.
Hey, Spencer, is this? Let's just concentrate on Jack and Graham. So Jack was slow, and it was really a miracle that Jack took a heat-soaked car out on a second run and was able to get right the 18 inches that he needed to knock his teammate out of the 500. Is this a team problem, or is this a Jack problem? Is this 50-50? How do you see it from where you're at?
I mean, going back to last year, Lundgaard and Harvey were 31st and 32nd, and
right,
probably would have been 32nd and 33rd if Stephen Wilson had made an attempt. But, and I don't that to be harsh, but I think it's the reality at that point. And I know, obviously, can't tell specifically how hiring Sordo has been for them, but Lundgaard and Harvey have always been good on the Indy road course. Lundgaard made his debut there and qualified 4th. Harvey has, I think, at least one podium there. Mm-hmm. As a second or third place start when he was with Shank.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably just many layers to this. And it's not like there's a lack of talent in the cockpit, so to speak. These are all 4 very talented drivers. So, and I heard Bobby Rahal say something that, 2020 they won with Sato. Graham finished third. Spencer Pigot was doing okay until he crashed. Sato led the next year late. Graham was in contention until he had a wheel problem on his pit stop and crashed. So, and then, you get to 2022 and now there's this. So I don't know what's it's engineering. Maybe they, miss having Sato's oval prowess and more specifically his prowess at Indy. I don't think it's any one thing, and I don't know if there's a silver bullet for them, so to speak. And like you guys kind of mentioned earlier, you got to kind of wonder how that's going to be when they get to Iowa and Gateway later in the season.
Yeah, and if I could add something to that, Spencer, it's easy to kind of focus in on Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, obviously with their 4 cars being near the bottom, but it might be a Honda issue too, in a way. And I only say that because obviously Ganassi's are Hondas and they're super strong, but the highest qualifying Honda that isn't a Ganassi was 15th, and that was Kyle Kirkwood for Andretti. So it might just be they're down a little bit on horsepower compared to Honda.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was done with that.
No, you can finish. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Well, I was looking last night because I noticed that the Ganassi, I kind of wanted to see what the drop off was in miles per hour, and seemed like Ganassi had a bit more drop off over the course of the 4 laps than some of the other teams in the Fast 6 like Foyt and McLaren and ECR. But if you look and measure it, towards the back half of that field, it seems like the drop off is much less for some of the Honda teams like Andretti, Shank, even Rahal. So
yeah, it looked like
I
the
don't know.
Hondas had a lot of scrub in the corners, more so than the Chevys did. The only ones that seemed to be able to manage it differently were the Chip Ganassi cars.
Yeah.
Right? And even they didn't manage it as well as, most of the McLaren cars did. So, and
I don't know.
Even, what is it? Ed Carpenter's team with Rinus VK. So Tim, let me throw it to you real quick. So 2 things I want to ask you, Timmy. Jack Harvey, I think he deserves another season at Rahal. If you are Jack Harvey, do you take it? Or do you or do you take your luck, right? Take your chances with signing somewhere else?
Well, I think if I'm Jack Harvey in that situation, and obviously expectations haven't been met over the last couple seasons, and if I'm him, based on some things I saw after the situation that happened yesterday with Bump Day and Graham getting knocked out, and seeing the relationship that him and Graham have, I think you stay, and I think that team builds upon not only Christian there, but Jack as well as Graham, and you sort of put your heads together and go, okay, what do we need to do in 2024 to come back? So if I'm Graham, I'm sticking around. I don't think there's an offer that's going to come that's going to be a top tier team. We'll call it that way. So I'm in it for the long haul at this point. I've already sort of made my choice. Unless he's carrying budget and can take it somewhere else, I don't think you're going to go into another situation and get paid probably what you're getting paid at Rahal. So
yeah, I don't think that Jack's bringing any budget, right? I think he was hired to drive that car, and I think that's where that is. I hope he stays there. I think that's the right move. Graham has had a lot of dialogue over the last couple of weeks about what does he do, and this hurts, that hurts, my sciatica, and the 200 plus days on the road, and the family at home and all that other stuff too. So I always think of it like the NFL, where if you start talking about retirement, you might already be retired. And
Yeah.
this thing right here could be, very difficult for Graham to shake off.
Yeah.
That's
I
what that
agree.
is.
And there's a couple things that I want to touch on just briefly. I think to
Mhm.
Brian's point, as well as Spencer's, when you look at Chevy versus Honda, I think there's something there. If you look at Chevy
agree.
pretty
Yep.
much dominates the top 18 teams in qualifying, right? There's only 5 Hondas, and that's 4 Ganassis and the 1 Andretti that Brian that you mentioned. And then when you look at the bottom 15, there's 11 Hondas in the bottom 15 of the grid, and there's only 4 Chevys, 4 Chevys, I believe, 5 Chevys. So when you look at that, there's a big discrepancy in, where the Chevys versus Honda stack up in this. Very interesting to see.
Yeah, and if I could shed a little bit more light on that, the Honda Chevy thing, more so Chevy within Chevy, namely Team Penske.
Mhm.
So just by the qualifying order, you would assume that Chevys were strong, and there was only one Penske in the top 12.
That's right.
So there's a couple of interesting things that have happened with Chevy, and namely Team Penske, is that since like Roger Penske bought IMS and the IndyCar series, they have yet to qualify a car in the top 10. That's wild. So they've had 14 entries since Roger Penske has bought IMS, and they have never once qualified in the top 10, which I think shows not necessarily a discrepancy between Chevy and Honda, but a problem inherently with Penske's situation at IMS.
I tried to find this quote. I heard Kevin Lee on their podcast, right, with Kirk Cabin on, where he was talking to Tim Cindric, and Tim Cindric talks about the importance of carb day, and they don't really, spend a lot of time thinking about the other stuff. They really focus their efforts on carb day. And to me, I'm taking this out of context, but I just feel like I need to add this based on what you're saying here, which is remarkable to me. Seems to me like carb day is too damn late. You know what I mean? It seems to me like 2 weeks have gone by before we start perking our interest. And I think, I doubt that that's necessarily the case, because I'm certain that, 12 months ago, Tim Cindric was focused on putting together one hell of an Indy 500 effort with all 3 of those cars, and they just fell flat again.
Yes, and
yeah.
and like a very interesting thing too with Team Penske is that they've been vocal about wanting to focus on IMS because of their lack of success over the recent years since Simon Pagenaud basically swept the month of May in 2019.
Mhm.
They just haven't done it. From 2020, they've kind of been mid-pack at best.
Right.
So, that's a really interesting thing. And then something that happened this weekend for the first time in the history of IMS was all AJ Foyt cars out-qualified all Team Penske cars.
Yeah, which is amazing.
That's never happened.
We're gonna jump into that. So this is a terrific segue. So I think we have to move from the last row up a little bit further to the grid. But before we get all the way to the front of that grid, I think you have to talk about Penske and Andretti. And you've made some wonderful points with respect to Team Penske there. But let's talk about Andretti. Spencer, is who's the bigger disappointment? Is it Team Penske or is it Andretti Autosport?
It's a tough one because, going back to, I'd say at least 2021, they've both kind of been the step behind Ganassi and Carpenter and McLaren, and so forth. I think honestly, I think you have to say Penske because
bigger expectations, right?
Well,
I think because of who they are, he owns the track, winningest team at the 500, and I think that he carries the biggest
Just
the biggest expectations. I agree with you there. Yeah.
just because they won, between New Garden and Ward, except for Ward's second race at Iowa, I think New Garden won every other oval race.
Right. Right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Tim, did you think that Andretti was going to put on a bigger show in qualifying for the 500?
Yeah, for sure. I thought they were going to be much stronger than what they were. They've been really good this year, right? And I know we've not been on many ovals. We only had the one in Texas, but I thought the team had sort of come together and said, you know what, we've not performed over the last several years. We're here to perform. And they fell flat, in my opinion. And when I looked at what was going on with, Marco and his comments about the team, which were really all about, we're throwing setups at these cars that we haven't run the whole month in order to get some qualification speed out of these cars. And he was livid. I've never seen him that angry at the team. And so you wonder what's going on there and where they missed. They missed right off the truck, right off the trailer, right? And couldn't get it. And they seemed, I believe, and maybe the other guys can correct me on this, but when they had the test in April, I don't think they were that far off, but I guess you're not running by yourself. You're running in groups. I think they'll be okay come race day, right? I think they're going to be good in traffic, and overall they'll come through. I just wonder over a stint with tire wear, how good will the cars be, and can they really compete at the end? We always see in the last 50 to 25 laps, that's when the horsepower comes out. That's when everybody's really geared towards going to the front of the field. And if you don't have it, you're going to get left behind.
Brian, did you have high expectations for Indy or for Andretti going into Indy qualifying?
No, I had high expectations for Herta. I actually picked him to be in the Fast 12 just because I think he's inherently fast. And but they've got a very young driver lineup. So Kyle Kirkwood's in his second year. He was last year with Foyt when they were nowhere. Romain Grosjean is Romain Grosjean. So
second year, right?
Yeah. He's second year with the team. Devlin DeFrancesco, quite frankly, no offense to him, shouldn't be in IndyCar. So I had some optimism with Herta, but when
somebody else said it for once. Thank you.
Yeah. So like I had some optimism with Herta. I think I predicted him to qualify 9th, maybe. But for him not to even make the Fast 12, again, I think that's a little bit of an indictment, not only on Honda, but on the way the Honda teams, or like how great, I guess, Ganassi is with Honda.
Yeah.
We're just on another planet. So,
right.
Yeah. So, like Andretti wasn't necessarily a surprise. I will say, somewhat of a surprise because I'm a big Kyle Kirkwood fan, but for him to be the highest qualified Andretti car at 15th was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I would agree to sort of add to that it wasn't Herta who was like immediately behind him.
Right.
Yeah. If Herta was behind somebody, it would be behind Kirkwood. So kind of a surprise. Yeah. I mean, frankly, I don't have a lot to say with regard to Andretti Autosport's situation qualifying for the 500. I think their cars will be fine during the race. They've got to be clean for a while because they're starting deep in that pack. And before we hit record on this session, we were talking about, where would you like to start? And they're starting all over the place, inner, middle, outside, and they got to try to get all 5 of those cars home. And we'll see. I mean, to finish first, right? You first have to finish.
Yeah.
But go ahead,
Dan, real quick on that. Like with the fact that the 4 Ganassi Hondas are starting up front, and then basically all other Hondas are mid pack and back.
Yeah.
One advantage I think Honda does have over Chevy is gas mileage, like fuel conservation. So I think one thing you will notice early in the race is the fact that almost all Hondas, and it might be split, but almost all Hondas will go from the green flag, they'll go straight fuel, conservation. So you might see a little bit of slide back at the initial stint of the race on especially those mid-pack Hondas. So it'll be interesting to see how the race plays out, like with cautions and any kind of like cycling through and all that. to see if any of those can cycle up to the front at all.
Yeah. I think that from a big picture perspective, I think, certainly this is a disappointment to Michael and the entire team. But I think from a big picture perspective, I think Andretti Autosport is definitely moving in the right direction. They came out this year and they have added some exclamation points to their running this year. And I think I have no reason to believe they won't be strong throughout the balance of the year. I know I was on a Zoom call with other media with Colton Herta, who talked about the fact that the team was going to go to Gateway and test, and go test because they know that short ovals are a bit of a problem for them right now. So more to come from that team. I just think they just missed out on 500, but I'm sure that they're gonna race well. Spencer, you have spent a lot of time at the track. I keep telling you how jealous I am by that. But Penske was pretty good in a lot of the practice sessions leading up to qualifying. Was there talk in and amongst the media and the people who were observing this, thinking that maybe Penske were back? Or do you think that people realized that they didn't have anything for Ganassi or McLaren?
I don't know if would say necessarily that Penske's back. I mean, you did see some of the Chevys leading no toe times, but that was a race boost and everything that obviously. But I think just Ganassi is so dominant that kind of doesn't matter what everyone else does. And kind of just to piggyback off of what Bryan had discussed, I think for me, the thing that I've noticed with Andretti, I don't see their issues as being performance related. I think there's just a lot of miscues they've had over the years, whether it be driver errors, pit stop errors, mechanical, whatever. So I think that since those have, kind of minimized to this point, I think that's why you're seeing a lot better performance out of the team.
You have 4 guys who are full-time with Andretti that are error prone, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that Kirkwood is, Herta is, Grosjean definitely is, and DeFrancesco, he definitely is as well. And I think that that's what it is, right? It's cleaning up the weekend, all 3 days on a traditional race weekend, cleaning up the weekend and getting things a lot tighter to the details. I think that will go a long way in helping this Andretti Autosport team.
Yeah, because I don't see pace as being their problem. I mean,
not this year.
Hurt has been at the front plenty of times. Grosjean's been up front. Grosjean was the only one who was in the Fast 12 for them last year's.
Right. Tim, Will Power, just, I mean, from a record standpoint, nobody better in IndyCar in qualifying. He gets himself into the Fast 12, but misses out on the Fast 6. Did you expect him to get into that Fast 6?
No, not at all.
You really didn't?
No, not at all. I didn't think they had the speed. They showed it with the other 2 drivers that they didn't have speed. And even with Will, they didn't really have the speed that they needed in order to go to the Fast 6. So I had no expectation that would even come to fruition. And it definitely didn't. He was 12th, right? After even after the Fast 12, if you want to call it, or the top 12. So yeah, I think overall Penske, you can't say it's the Chevy power plant, right? On the Honda side, you could say maybe it's the Honda. On the Chevy, I don't think you can, because the horsepower is there. They're just missing, and
They're just missing.
I don't know what it is. Is it anybody?
Small detail.
I know there's something that just isn't clicking when it comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and getting speed out of that car and trimming it out and making it stable, not having it slide up the track. Sliding up the track scrubs a ton of speed. And I think there's a fine balance between getting it around the corner quickly and getting it around the corner where you don't have enough grip that it's scooting up the track, if you will.
Yeah. Scott McLaughlin qualifies 14th. He outqualified his Bus Bro teammate, Joseph Newgarden, who qualified 17th. Joseph did pull his time on Saturday, but then he fell flat. It just occurred to me, I think he may even have dropped a spot there. I thought he was originally 16th before they pulled that time and put him back out there. To Bryan and Spence, Bryan first, is this a surprise to you that Scotty Mack would outqualify Joseph, who has proven to be a oval master over the last couple of seasons?
Not a huge surprise. I mean, they weren't far off. I mean, there were 0.2 of a mile an hour off from each other. So Joseph obviously is an oval master, but he is far from an Indy 500 Indianapolis Motor Speedway master. Which kind of is really surprising. And, and like, I think that a lot of people want to see him make that breakthrough, like he's the longest tenured, I believe Spencer could tell me, but I'm pretty sure he's the longest tenured Penske driver without a win in the Indy 500. So he's just not had a lot of success there. He's run up front a couple of years, but, again, I think it's just a Team Penske situation to where they just don't have necessarily the outright speed, which is kind of surprising, especially this year with Chevy kind of being shown as being, like the preferred engine to have. So, like Will Power barely making it into the Fast 12 and then, like finishing 12th and starting 12th. So they're all right there. So I'm not super surprised. McLaughlin loves IMS. He says it's his favorite track in the world now. So, if anything, I see McLaughlin in just his third start, figuring it out and like moving to the front a little bit. Obviously Will Power loves that place and is great there. So, but for some reason, Joseph Newgarden has always kind of been not off the charts amazing there. So I don't know what that is, or like what that issue is there with him personally, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where those three are when it comes to about lap 150 to see if they've kind of moved themselves and kind of positioned themselves up to the front. So like when it comes to straight racecraft, Joseph Newgarden obviously is like one of the best, if not the best, in IndyCar. And like during the open test, in my opinion, Joseph Newgarden's car was the best looking car. Like, like in traffic.
Not
he
just
looked really
livery.
good in practice today.
He did.
Right,
He looked
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Hey,
So it'll be
Spence,
interesting to see what he looks like too on Friday when they do like the full go at it too.
Right.
Yeah. So I think Newgarden will be okay, but
they'll race fine. I think the cars are going to race really well.
Yep. Exactly.
And I think they're going to race to the front.
Yep.
Because I think we know that Chevy has that fuel situation. They're not going to be as good as the Honda, so there's no reason to even try to match that fuel save. They just have to go and hope for some yellows. Go ahead, Timmy.
Yep.
I was just going to say, given Penske's history at the Speedway, obviously a ton of success. Do you, and I think I got the answer, but I just want to state it clearly. Do you think any of these three drivers have a chance of taking the 107th running of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the 500 here? Dan's shaking his head. Yes.
I think.
Bryan, do you think these guys got a shot to take the victory?
Yeah, of course, I think they do. But like, yes, I think they do. Like, so like Newgarden's starting pretty far back. I think he can move his way to the front. Like McLaughlin, same, and like obviously Will Power.
Power's not as far back. Yeah.
No, exactly. So he's close to us. We've got a further way to go. But like, I do think that if it gets down to it, and it's like a battle between Newgarden, so like who are you taking in a battle between Newgarden? Let's say it's Newgarden, Dixon, Award, and Alex Palou. Who are you taking in the last stint?
Who you said? Dixon, Award, Palou.
Dixon, Award, Palou, and Newgarden.
Palou.
Yeah,
I don't think
any. I don't think anybody would pick Newgarden, which is crazy on an oval. So
yeah.
So like I do think that he can get to the front. I think he has a chance to finish top 10. Right.
Yeah. St. Louis, right? Iowa.
Iowa.
That's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
so go ahead.
sorry, Spencer, I'm looking back at some of the DMs that we have in the Twitter exchange here, and you actually have Scott McLaughlin out qualifying Newgarden. You got him a little further up, but not remarkably up. But you already saw it, that you thought that McLaughlin was going to be better than Newgarden. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm just looking back to kind of see Newgarden's past results, and I think his best results were when he started second and finished third in 2016, and that was with Carpenter, Fisher. No, I think it was Ed Carpenter racing at that point. Anyway, so his best result was in 2020 when he finished fifth, and he started fourth in 2018. So, so it's not like he's struggled there his entire career. I mean, he made the Fast Nine as a rookie.
Right. You also, by the way, you're getting a gold star for the day, for the whole weekend, because you also on day 2 text me that Graham would be bumped.
I was thinking about this.
I don't want to reach back that far, but I have to say that. So
no, I was thinking about it, and I thought back to like Schmidt Peterson not qualifying. Trying to think of McLaren in 2019 when they were with
Alonso.
Andretti in 2011. And I feel like, out of context, if you mention those instances, even Rahal in 93 or Penske in 95, yeah, it'd be a shock. But if you look at what happened during the course of, the month of May in all those seasons, including this one, then yeah, you probably wouldn't be surprised. So,
yeah.
And I don't mean that as a diss or anything.
No.
Against anybody, but
look, if you listen to the show, you see I come off the rails with it. So I don't apologize for anything, because you're never going to be as direct as I have been during some of these shows. Hey, Bryan, you mentioned it, Foyt Racing. Man, oh man, I would have never guessed this at all a week ago, or I would have put them like middle bottom. I wouldn't have put them fighting for last row, but I would have put them in the 20s somewhere. And talk to me about Santucci. That's my name for him.
Yeah,
Santucci and Benjamin Peterson putting this thing well into the show, man, making a statement for AJ Foyt Racing.
So really, there's only 2 words that need to be said for how that happened, and that's Michael Cannon.
Yes.
True genius, like absolute genius. Which again kind of goes back to a little bit with the Rahal Letterman Lanigan thing. Like Michael Cannon was available to be hired. Like Rahal Letterman Lanigan went with Stefano Sordo, and the smallest, most undefeated, underfunded full-time team, Foyt, picked the genius.
Yes.
So I do think that's, and there is a 1-to-1 correlation there, to where, like when Michael Cannon came on this year, like I even tweeted out that it's one of the biggest off-season moves this year. Because like I do think that you'll see almost immediate gains with AJ Foyt Racing, like with that addition. But did I predict on any level that Santino Ferrucci and Benjamin Peterson, especially as a rookie, would make the Fast 12 at Indy? No. So like Spencer and I were going back and forth maybe 2 weeks ago about our predictions for qualifying, and I didn't have either Foyt in the top 12. But I knew they would be better, but I didn't know that they would be that good. And Santino Ferrucci is literally, I think, the perfect driver for AJ Foyt Racing. He just doesn't care.
Yeah, I agree.
He is who he is. He's going to go all out 100% of the time, all the time. He doesn't care if he ruffles feathers, which, apparently I've heard rumors that his boss was the same way. So, and he's a perfect fit, I think, for AJ Foyt Racing. And I think that really showed in his Fast 12 run when the first lap he went over 235. That's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And for the fact that like AJ Foyt has never out-qualified all, like Team Penske cars in the history of the Indianapolis, like 500 is incredible. I don't know if you saw some video or, on Peacock or whatnot, or like even in person of like AJ Foyt this weekend. He just looked different. He looked like a 45-year-old that is ready to fight like he was just into it, like loved it. And even like the buzz around the track, I was there, like all this weekend too. It's just a better place to be. Like it's always obviously a great place to be, but it's just a better place to be when AJ Foyt is fast.
Sure.
And it just seems natural and it just makes sense. It's like all is right in the world when AJ Foyt racing is fast at Indy. And it's been a long time since they've been a legit fast cars at it, like legit fast cars at Indy.
Mm-hmm. I was saying exactly that all last season because it sounded like, in fact, we changed the format of the show during race reviews because it just felt like I was beating up, AJ Foyt racing and Rahal Letterman Lanigan racing every weekend.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to be that way because, and I had said it several times, I want AJ Foyt Racing to be a good racing team. I want them to be, part of the story and not in a good way, in a good way. And I struggled with that last year, and I'm happy to see them here. I don't know what this means, going forward. Just as an aside, maybe we can try to get some facts here pulled up. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Michael Cannon has like formal training as an engineer. I think he's self-taught. Like
that's
he came
completely
through the
possible.
ranks.
I don't know his background, but I just know that anywhere he goes, the car is just faster.
Which is also a very is a very AJ Foyt Racing thing to do.
Yeah.
Michael Cannon worked with Scott Dixon.
Yeah.
And contributed to a lot of success.
Yeah. He knows how to make race cars go fast. And that's really at the end of the day, all that matters. And I think that too, that's really at the end of the day, all that like AJ Foyt wants. But I do want to like, to me, the story of the weekend, well, there are two, in my opinion. Well, three really. But the second biggest one is AJ Foyt Racing putting both their cars in the top 12. Santino Ferrucci having a legitimate shot at winning the Indianapolis 500 in a Foyt car, which, like they haven't won the Indianapolis 500 in 24 years, almost a quarter of a century. Like that's a legitimate thing. And like there was a true buzz in the crowd every single time Santino Ferrucci, or even like Benjamin Peterson, who's a rookie, the only rookie to make the top 12 was in a Foyt car. When like, it's just wild. So like, that's such a good weekend for AJ Foyt Racing. And not only that, but it's a great weekend for fans of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, fans of the Indy 500. There's no negatives with that whatsoever.
Totally agree.
So, and I honestly think Ferrucci has a decent shot of winning this race.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, even when I was in the media center, I had Roger Ward Jr. come up to me, and that was one of the first things he mentioned. Sorry, I didn't mean to name drop or anything.
Nice, I love it. You could always name drop Roger Ward anytime.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to tell you guys that story later because it's not really relevant. But yeah, that was one of the first things he mentioned was Foyt doing well because I want to say I think it was 25 years with Billy Boat since. They won the pole, and that year I think they had Kenny Breck on the outside of the front row, and then they won the race next year. Also, I was going to ask, I unfortunately don't have this knowledge, and I wouldn't know where to find it. Do you guys know what Michael Cannon's official title with Foyt is right now? I mean, because I don't know if he's.
It's funny. I just looked him up on LinkedIn, and he's still listed as engineer at Chip Ganassi Racing. So he hasn't even updated his own LinkedIn. So that's what I looked at. I wanted to look at education, which is there's nothing listed, and I wanted to see what he was listed at with Foyt. So and we can. Hey, who knows? If he's got a Twitter thing, maybe we'll just flip him out something. Tim, you're a Santino Ferrucci fan, inexplicably. Do you agree with Bryan? Does he have a shot at winning this thing?
I agree with Brian that he has a shot. My
Oy.
concern is over 5 pit stops. How do you be
That team.
consistent? Yeah. How do you get the team to perform 5 times in a row flawlessly? How do you call the right strategy? I'm not saying they're new to the game, right? But maybe they're new to the game of being up front. And how do you strategize appropriately to run with the big boys all day long? And so that's my concern with Ferrucci. Can he wheel it? Of course. Could he do it? Absolutely. I just have that concern. And so for that reason, I wouldn't put him at like the main pick for winning the Indy 500, but it could happen.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, I think you brought up a great point there, because AJ Foyt Racing, especially when you mention the pits, have been notoriously atrocious on pit stops for the past, I don't know, half a decade at least.
Yeah.
So, and as we know it, IMS, so like, I think the best thing that could possibly happen for Ferrucci are well-timed yellows where they can pit under yellow and not lose a ton of track time by doing 9-second stops when everybody else is doing 7-second stops under green. So yeah, that's a great point, Tim.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to culture, what the culture is in the team, and how does that culture evolve over time. And I think this is going to leapfrog them, obviously, to the spotlight, to the limelight. Now you've really got to work at it, and you got to work at it. They should be running pit stops from now until Sunday and running whatever car they have through that and getting those crew members ready to go and setting expectations of this is how we're going to do it. And so it makes me nervous, but that's why they run the race, and we'll see what happens.
Totally agree. I think we're all on the same page for that one. So, hey, one other driver that made it interesting in the top 6 was Rinus Veekay. Class of the ECR bunch, which I think is a little bit of a surprise. I know that's a surprise to me. I would have, expected to have at least one more ECR car, take your pick, in that top 12. But Rinus Veekay qualifies second. And here's the deal with Rinus. He qualified 9th and 20, his first 500, 24th and 21. So that's a bit of a blip. 3rd place last year and 2nd place qualifying this year. He's good here. He's good here in qualifying because his finishes are a completely different story. So his qualifying average is 9.5, and that's because of that disaster in 21. But his average finish is 18th across the 3 finishes.
Hey, Dan, you have those numbers. No offense, but you have those numbers wrong.
Do I?
Yeah.
I just messaged you guys.
Started 4th and 20. Look at that.
Yeah. In 2020, he started 4th. In 21, he started 3rd. In 22, he started 3rd. And like this year, he's going to start 2nd. So his worst starting position at IMS is 4th.
There you go. Well, I got him off the IndyCar website, so maybe I looked at him wrong. It wouldn't be the first time I've done that. Started 4th and 20 and 3rd and 21 and which means his average is even better, and his race finishes are even worse in comparison.
Exactly.
So here's the question, and I'll let both of you take it. Is he a one-hit wonder? Like, is he an Indy 500 wonder and kind of vanilla elsewhere?
He won his first pole in his first race at the road course. So
that was a while ago.
I mean, he won a pole at Barber too, and he almost won that race last year.
Sort of flickers. Brian, how do you see Rinus Veekay?
I do think he's somewhat, obviously it's kind of a low sample size, but I mean, 4 at some point you can come to a conclusion. He seems to be somewhat of a savant at, like qualifying at IMS. And I think the only way obviously you can compare that to is the way that he has qualified, versus his teammates. Right. He's the only one to make the top 12 this year, like among his team. That's notoriously fast at IMS. But I will say that his run too on Sunday blew my mind because of what happened to him in practice in the morning. Like, I think he blew a piston. They had to replace some stuff on the engine. I thought for sure that he wouldn't make the Fast 6. I was talking to Spence, like in the morning. I was like, "There's no way he makes, the Fast 6." But not only does he make the Fast 6, he almost wins the pole. Right. He lost the pole by like 0.00 miles an hour, which is a
Mhm.
wild number.
Right.
So
Yeah, 234.217 is pole speed from Palou. 234.211
yeah,
is Rinus VK.
0.006 of a mile an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally. So like if you're driving down the highway on 465 going 60 miles an hour and somebody's going 59.994 miles an hour, you wouldn't even notice the difference.
No.
And like
You're
that's
right.
the difference that missed like Rinus VK from the pole from a blazing fast Alex Palou car.
Mhm.
So and again, that's Honda versus Chevy.
Right. I want to
So
get your both your opinion on this as well. I have been saying a while that it feels to me like most of the resources at Ed Carpenter Racing are devoted toward, a solid 500 and a solid start and solid finish at the 500. And they do put in the resources into the rest of the team, but not at the level that they do for the 500. Do you guys agree with that, or do you disagree with me on that? Go ahead, Spencer.
It's kind of hard to say. They may, it may be more of a mentality thing than anything else, honestly. It may not be something like they go out specifically to do, but
Might
I
just be how
know
it shakes out.
I know that in the past when they've talked to Ed Carpenter about it, he said, they'll tell me, hey, you're just the driver for the month of May. So, it again, it's probably a lot of things.
Right. VK is 18th in the championship standings right now. Connor Daly is 24th. Brian, how do you see it? Do you agree with me or disagree? You got on mute, Brian.
so yeah, I got you.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so that was another thing too that I heard this week. Something very interesting. Connor Daly's on, so he's a free agent at the end of this year.
Mhm.
Bitnile now supports and funds 3 cars for ECR, and like Connor Daly obviously is the one that brought in, like Bitnile.
Right.
So at the end of this year, I don't see any, and from what I've heard, I don't see anything that keeps Connor Daly at ECR. So I think the real question is, so where does Bitnile go? So I've heard some interesting things where Connor Daly might be shopping around Bitnile a little bit. And a fear that Ed Carpenter Racing will keep Bitnile and get rid of Connor Daly. So if the Connor Daly connection with Bitnile can stay, then that means that Connor Daly could have a full ride somewhere else. And I heard a crazy rumor about him possibly going to Andretti. But as far as currently this year, like with ECR and their overall mentality about Indy, they've just figured out Indy in a way.
Yeah.
But I think that the qualifying this year was really interesting, with VK basically being an inch away from making the pole, and then Ed Carpenter being on the inside of row 5. Connor Daly struggling still a little bit, like on the inside of row 6. They're fast cars, like,
Yeah.
so like I think that, but they're kind of in a way nowhere on road courses, especially Connor Daly.
Right.
But like I do think VK is a special talent, super young. I think he's underratedly young in a way. Like, everybody talks about how young Hurt
He's
is, or David
22 years
Malukas.
old or
Yeah,
something like that, right?
he's
Yeah.
22. So like I think his long game is long. So like I think that he will be kind of a big free agent when that comes up.
But he's got to stay in the game long enough to garner the interest, right? That's the
True.
key. He
True.
can't do dumb things. And he had a tough year last year where he had some moments where it wasn't the smartest thing. Tim,
did.
this is juicy. I see you kind of perking up on that. How do you what do you think? Connor Daly taking Bitnile somewhere. What do you think?
Yeah, like Brian said, he brought Bitnile there. So
Right.
could he take him somewhere? Potentially. Has Ed built that relationship with Bitnile that they want to stay with Ed instead? It- you know, Connor's not around every weekend, right? He's in the back. He's not quick. So could he go to Andretti? Yeah, I could pretend if he has Bitnile with him.
Andretti will
Otherwise,
take
if
that
it's
check, right, and put him in there in place of Di
yeah, for
Francesco.
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. We'll see sort of how that plays out. Interesting information though, Brian.
But I will say, if Connor Daly has yet again another great or a good solid, run this weekend in the Indy 500, that all could change.
Sure.
Yeah.
It really, and like, that's how weird the fickle, like the IndyCar sponsorship game is that, you could have one good showing and all of a sudden you're locked in for another 2 years. So yeah, but
Happened with Power and Pagano.
yeah, and Sato.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Yep. So kind of going into the weekend, Tim and I picked Felix Rosenqvist, which was amazing to me that we both picked Felix for this poll. We know now it wasn't correct, but it was still a very strong pick. Spencer, you had Award, right? And Brian, you had Dixon?
Yes, I did. I had Dixon to win his third pole in a row, first time ever in history, and he let me down.
Well, let's put it to you this way. I mean, maybe let you down on the pick, but the pick was good. The pick was really good. In fact, Spencer, you had the front row, right? You had Award, Dixon, and VK. VK made that front row, but all strong picks. They were all strong picks, man. Right? All top 6. I can't see this thing anymore. And then Brian, you had Dixon, Rosenqvist, and Palou. Dixon was the only one really that let you down.
Yeah.
Qualifying 6th.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those were really good picks. Moving on to Arrow McLaren, Felix was the top qualifier of the 4 drivers. Arrow McLaren, no surprise to me with their effort this weekend. They've hit on something here that Penske hasn't. And they have 4 huge guns going into the 500. Would not surprise me to see the winner come from this group. All 3 of you, do you agree or disagree? We're going to ask for a pick here at the end of this deal, so you may not want to show your cards entirely, but could you see the winner coming from this group?
From the Arrow McLaren group?
Yes.
Yeah. I think all 4 of them have a absolute legitimate shot.
I totally agree. Spence, do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think that anybody who's followed IndyCar since last year knows that Zach Brown and this entire organization have kind of been loading up all the bullets into this chamber, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just for
not only good here though, they've been good right out of the chute for the season. Timmy, you see a winner coming in victory lane in orange?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a possibility. Your worst starting position is Kanaan in 9th. You've got Rossi in 7th, Award 5th, and Rosenqvist in 3rd. So I think you can see a winner coming out of this group. It really comes down to how the race sort of plays out. How does the fuel mileage play in this, and does it really play to the final few laps? So I think you got to look at that, because you'd hate to be 2 laps short and have to come in and pit because you're don't have the fuel mileage. But I think it could come out of this group for sure. They've shown they're tough. They came here to win. They came here to play. I think a lot of this is driven, and maybe I'm stretching here, but a lot of it is driven when they missed out on getting Fernando in the race. And so there's a real sense of urgency to, come up and win. And they were 2nd last year, right? If you look at that in the race. So with Award. So
well, let's also not forget, I'm sorry to apologize, but let's not forget that the 4 Arrow McLaren drivers this year finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th last year.
That's absolutely correct.
So, and they're starting 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th.
That's right.
So the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place finishers from last year are all starting within the first 3 rows this year in a preferred engine, technically.
Yes.
And they can all do it. 2 of them are past winners. Like Palou Award has finished 2nd, 3rd, Spence probably got it off the top of his head. Felix Rosenquist, who I have no idea how Arrow McLaren could get rid of him at the end of this year, is a solid driver, and like very biased. He's my second favorite IndyCar driver.
Totally agree.
But like, I mean, they have, if they don't have the favorite to win it, other than, in my opinion, Alex Palou, but then they're going to be right there, and it's going to be very interesting to see how those four cars, like battle each other for the last 50 laps to see how they race each other. And if Pato O'Ward just didn't lift going into one last year, like after the white flag, I honestly think that he had the edge, and he probably would have won.
Yeah, the third best Ganassi car won that race, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Spencer, you do you like I'm not asking for a pick yet, but do you like what you see here out of Aaron McLaren, and do you like their chances in the 500?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, there's any number of things that could go wrong. I mean, we've seen it throughout history. We saw, going back to 1912, Ralph De Palma lose a 5-lap lead, seeing the turbine, from Parnelli Jones in 67 lose for a $6 ball bearing, I think it was. So, like everybody else, they have to have all the brakes go the right way.
Yes.
But, yeah, it's definitely within the realm of possibility.
I like it. Ganassi had the biggest target on their back headed into the 500. They were dominant in 2022, and there was no reason to believe that they wouldn't be again. Would you call this dominant, though? Yes, Palou is on the pole, but not at the jaw-dropping dominance it was last year. Or did our expectations create too high of an expectation, right? What we saw last year, did that create too high of an expectation for this year, Tim?
I think maybe a little bit, they're quick.
Judging them harshly, right?
I think it's a little disappointing that they didn't have more drivers up front. I know that's silly to say when you look at Palou first and Dixon sixth, and then you got Sato in eighth. That I think people thought Sato was going to go crazy and be really far up, but they all made the fast 12, even have Ericsson at 10. So I think our expectations were a little too high based on what they did last year. Solid performance. They barely won the pole, as we already discussed.
But they wouldn't have lost it to an Arrow McLaren car. They would have lost it to Ed Carpenter Racing car.
I know, which was interesting.
Yeah,
and
Chevy.
Last show we talked about, these two teams and saying they're going to be the most dominant. And I inadvertently left out Ed Carpenter. I got too excited about the other two teams here is Ed Carpenter Racing. So yeah, they're legitimate, right? They're going to be strong. They're going to have the fuel mileage. They're going to be good with strategy. You don't have to worry too much about pit stops and all that. It all comes down to drivers executing, the crew's going to execute, and just keeping the car handling all day and using the tools you got in the car to work that car stint after stint after stint. And if they need to make adjustments, they're going to make good adjustments, maybe fractionally better than Arrow McLaren adjustments, in my opinion, just because they've been around so much longer. That's sort of my take on, Ganassi and where they're at going into 500.
I love that you mentioned Sato. Oh, I'm sorry, Spencer.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wasn't going to say, I don't think it's just last year. I mean, Sato and Ericsson, I think, were on top for most of, or at least two of the first three full practice days.
So I'm going to give you both this question then, Bryan and Spencer. I'll start with Spencer. Did you expect more out of Sato in this car than 8th place qualifying, Spencer?
Let me to go back to my notes to see what my prediction was.
Yeah, I kept blowing it out. It was driving me bananas. So yeah, let's see if I can get back.
I mean,
in.
I had him on the front row.
There you go. That's a tall expectation. Brian, did you
But-
have front row for Sato?
No, I didn't. And I don't recall what my prediction was. Maybe Spencer has it in front of him. But like I think kind of at the end of qualifying, the thing that kind of hit me was that leading into qualifying, there was a lot of talk, and like I was part of it, was like, can Ganassi lock out the front row?
Mm-hmm.
And like that was a clear possibility. And then maybe late Fast Friday, I think I even messaged Spence and I was like, hey, it could be like a lockout Arrow McLaren front row.
Yeah.
And imagine
Very
that,
cool.
like with the Triple Crown cars being locked out on the front row. And is what invariably happens with IndyCar is the least expected thing. So is what we ended up with was a front row of 3 different teams. So it was the opposite of a lockout. You got Ganassi, you got Ed Carpenter, you got Arrow McLaren.
Mhm.
So, and I think the surprising thing for me was I know Dixon changed his engine the night before qualifying, which maybe hurt him a little bit. I don't know. So he went 6th. But I think the one that like really threw the wrench in my predictions, at least, was Foyt. Like nobody on the face of the planet had Foyt being in the top 10.
No way.
So, and like Tony Kanaan being 9th, I think is going to be a really interesting thing to do. But like just Ganassi as a whole, I think are still really strong. And
they were just off, right? I mean, Award 5th, Dixon 6th, Rossi 7th, Sato 8th, Kanaan 9th, Ericsson 10th, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're just right behind him.
Right. And it shows a little bit about the like the difference of like in IndyCar, like and it's a fraction of a mile an hour.
Right.
Like every little tiny thing matters. And like I think for the race, Tim, I brought up a great point. I think it'll be very interesting with Foyt being qualified so high up about how their strategy compares to because when was the last time a Foyt car was running up front at Indy? So their strategy, like all their strategy information is out the window because they don't have any data on that because they've never done it. So like at least not in recent years. And then, so like Ganassi is always up front. Like Arrow McLaren's a newer, younger team, but they got Taylor Kyle. So don't sleep on that guy. That dude is a genius. So, it'll be very interesting to see how the strategy calls happen and if Rinus Veekay can hold that top position. And then who wants to lead the first couple laps? Like who wants to lead?
I think the Chevys want to lead, period.
I agree.
I really do. I think the Chevys want to go after it.
I guarantee Palou falls back and then he lets, like VK and Rosenquist and Ferrucci. Ferrucci's going to want to be up in front the whole day.
That is correct.
Tim will tell you that Rosenquist is going to fall back.
Yeah, I could see. Well, really? Why? Why would you say that, Tim?
It's his nature. In every race I've ever seen him where he qualifies up front by lap 2, he's 5th place or worse.
Go ahead, Spence.
I can see that, but I just have a feeling that McLaren's just going to go balls to the wall for this race.
Yeah, probably. I know the
put
other
a rabbit out
McLaren
there, right?
guys
So
will.
put a rabbit out there to pace the field. You let the other ones sort of sit back. That's the beauty of having a 4-car team. You can do different strategies and then people playing, so that way you're kind of covered.
I could tell you, like, I'm not sitting in turn 1 this year for the first time in a long time. I'm actually out in turn 4, but something that will be worth the price of admission if you're in turn 1 is to see what Santino Ferrucci does from 4th place in turn 1, lap 1 of the Indianapolis 500. That dude will do something nuts, and he could take out the first 2 rows.
Yeah, just don't.
Or he could go around the outside and like just take the lead on like turn 1, lap 1. He's such a wild card.
Yeah,
but I love watching that dude drive.
I know.
And I just
Hey,
wanted
I'm-
to, I just
go
want to
ahead.
add to Brian's point earlier about having 3 different teams on the front row. You can go to the 4th place. You got 4 different teams in the first 4 spots, which I don't think anybody would have ever thought that was a possibility, right?
No.
Yeah,
We're
it's a
talking
great
about
point, Tim.
lockouts. We're talking about lockout by Ganassi
Yeah.
first, then maybe Arrow McLaren next, but they have 4 different teams in the first 4 spots. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, nobody thought that. Hey, I want to get just a couple of quick thoughts from each of you about your what you picked up from, other than what we just covered. Some other things that you picked up from practice and qualifying here, and I'm gonna start with my buddy, my co-host, Timmy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I sort of picked up on, we talked a little bit about both of them, but just Chevy up front in the first 18 spots, having 13 of those cars up there. So that surprised me a little bit when I actually looked at the stats and what was going on. I think the other part of this that is just how close the field is from first to 33rd. And what it takes to get these cars. These cars have been around 12 years, right, Dan? Something like
Yep.
that. And you got to really tweak these. They put some new features on it this year for Aero to get the win where it needs to be, and obviously more downforce. So this field is tight, and we talked about it with Harvey getting it over Ray Hall, and then we also talked about it when you look at the front row and the first 2 drivers. So anything can happen here, and those are kind of the big takeaways when I look at qualifying.
Spencer, our web guru, talk to me about what you picked up from practice and qualifying, other than what we talked about.
Well, I'm kind of interested to see, now that you mentioned it, what Ganassi's plans are. I know last year when they had Dixon and Palou on the front row, they just kind of, kept
They
playing.
played leapfrog, right, for the first
Yeah, they played leapfrog.
couple of dozen. Yeah,
and I'm kind of wondering if Palou's gonna have that warrior mentality that he goes by and goes straight to the front and just try and run away, or if they're gonna try and play chicken with the field, and it's just gonna be where the leader is, or the lead's a hot potato, so to speak.
yep. I think that those Hondas can go fast, but with still saving some fuel. And I think those Hondas will be fast, and they can save some fuel with a battle between Ferrucci, who we know wants to lead this thing, and Rinus Veekay, who I think we know wants to lead this thing too. Brian, same question to you. What do you got?
So my biggest takeaways, especially from the qualifying weekend, are again, no Penske qualifying in the top 10. So ever
That's
since
amazing.
Roger Penske, again, bought the place, he hasn't had a top 10 qualifier, which is wild to me. But I think one thing that we haven't hit on yet at all is the fact that Able Motorsports with
Yeah.
RC Anderson qualified somewhat comfortably.
Yes.
And like they like when they were announced, everybody was like, nope, they're not going to make it. So that's the 34th, they're out. And like I posted something this afternoon. So like they made their announcement on April 21st.
Mhm.
Obviously there's a bunch of background stuff that happens, but they made their announcement on April 21st. Literally one day less than a month later, they qualified for the Indianapolis 500 and bumped out Graham Rahal.
Yep.
Essentially.
I was sort of in the back of my mind writing the line that I didn't write yet, but the line I was anticipating writing was Able Motorsports, RC Enerson, and Mr. Enerson just demonstrated the easiest way to blow $1 million.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
That
like,
was my anticipation, was that
Yeah.
they weren't going to make it.
Yeah. Well,
Although-
they didn't have a shot.
Yeah, Tim and I talked to the car chief or crew chief of the Indy next team at Able,
Mhm.
and I asked him about the IndyCar effort and preparing the car. And Tim, I don't know about you, but I saw a positivity in his response to me when I asked him about it, which made me feel like, oh, there's a shot here. There really is. There's a genuine shot here. He seemed pretty positive about it. He was a cool guy to talk to. I don't remember his
and
name.
he
but
actually
a cool guy to talk to.
graduated. Like RC Anderson's dad, actually, wild, dumb, nobody cares about fact. He graduated from the high school that was my rival high school. I went to Perry Meridian High School, and he graduated from Southport High School
There
in
you go.
Indianapolis. Yeah. So, but like to me, that's the story of the month. Like, and well,
agree.
outside the fact that Graham Rahal got bumped, but like,
Yeah.
that's insane.
It's a great
Like, you make
observation.
an announcement, and less than a month later, you are qualified for the Indianapolis 500, and you are bumping, like Graham Rahal. And like Graham Rahal and like oddly got bumped 30 years after his dad did. His dad got bumped in 1993, and then his son gets bumped in 2000, like 23. So
Yeah.
so those are big ones, I think. But and here's another odd thing, and Spence could validate this for me. I haven't triple checked it, but I'm pretty sure that row 6 this year, no, not row 6, row 3 this year, with Alexander Rossi, Takuma Sato, and Tony Kanaan, is the first time that an entire row is of past winners since the best row ever at Indy, which was 1991, when it was Rick Mears, Mario Andretti, and I think AJ Foyt. Like that iconic front row in 1991. So
to quote our favorite segment, that's a big deal.
that is a big deal. And then if you're an American fan, if you're a fan of America, row 6 is Connor Daly, Joseph Newgarden, and Ryan Hunter-Reay.
That's true.
So that could be like an all-American row.
That's funny. You're reading my mind, and I got to ask you guys this, and then we'll wrap up here with some predictions. But tell me, I'm gonna abstain from this one. What do you expect of Ryan Hunter-Reay, Brian, in this race?
I'm a big Ryan Hunter-Reay fan, as probably most people are. But I mean, I think eventually, or like ultimately, is what he's going to do with that car is get everything that he can out of that car. So if that's a
top 10, top 15,
I mean, if that's a 10th place car, he's going to get 10th. If that's an 8th place car, he's going to get 8th. If that's a 12th place car, he's going to get 12th. And that's just what kind of like Ryan Hunter-Reay does. So ultimately, obviously, I would love to see him win, but I don't think that that's a winning car. But I think a top 10 and a like Ryan Reinbold car, which is an up and coming kind of like one-off team that's like ultimately has the available. Sage Karam 2 years ago in a Ryan Reinbold, didn't he finish 6th or 7th or 8th?
7th after qualifying 31st.
Boom.
There you go.
Look at that. Boom. Thank you, buddy. So yeah,
Spencer, what do you think of Ryan Hunter-Reay's chances in this year's 500?
I could definitely see him, running around 5th, 10th. Again, I hate to sound cliche, but it's all kind of just, what happens during the race and everything.
I love it. Timmy?
Not a chance.
Top 10, top 15?
I think he's 20th or worse.
Thanks for coming. Okay.
Oh,
Thanks
man.
for coming.
That's where I'm at with Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to abstain because I haven't been the kindest to RHR over the past 2 years.
I think it's just hard to take a one-off team. I know they've been
agree.
around, but I think it's just hard to do it, right? I think it's going to take some time. So he's starting, 18th is what I'm sort of looking at here. So it's not out of the realm to drop a few spots and finish 20th or worse. So time will tell. I guess you got to look at who's behind him, and you got Roman Grosjean, you got Herta. I'm just looking, some names that could go. You got Alio, you got Simon Pagino. So who knows?
I don't put anything into either one of those two either.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, the Meyer Shank cars are boat anchors.
Yeah, man. There's something weird there, right? There's something very, very strange going on with that. In fact, there's more notes, as you guys are all aware, because I shared the notes with everybody, and we left out some of that stuff, and we're going to leave it out, but we're going to have to come back to it at some point. So I need some predictions from you fellas, and I'm happy to go first if you want me to, because I don't want you to think I'm poaching. I do know who my winning prediction is, but I have it listed here. Timmy, you want to give me your winning prediction? Who
No,
wins
I
this
want to
thing?
go with other people first. I don't want to go first on this
Spencer,
one.
who do you got winning this thing?
I just because I'm stubborn, I'm gonna stick with my preseason pick of Rosenquist. I I just see so many similarities between Ganassi last year and Arrow McLaren this year. It's 4 cars versus 5, but with Arrow McLaren, you've got the 2 former 500 winners, the runner-up from the previous year, and the one who wins is the overlooked Swede.
Yeah, I love that pick because Rosenquist is very quickly becoming a top 3 favorite for me. That's for sure.
I'll add this too.
You text me earlier today and you said let me know if you need anything from the track before I go, and I was this close to saying, go, I'll Venmo you the money, go get me a Rosenquist jersey, but I thought I'm going to be in
Yes.
Detroit next week, but I'll just get it there.
I'm kind of hesitant to buy any driver specific mark. I mean, I bought him and some pins and stuff, but I'm a little hesitant to go there. But I can buy one and ship it to you.
Nah, get it from Detroit. Brian, who you got?
I told Brian I'd ship him some bags of Old Bay goldfish.
Yes. I have 6 bags.
I did see that tweet.
bags left.
Yes.
I bought 10 of them.
I
have
I didn't
6
learn
bags
about
left.
Old Bay until I had somebody that used to work on my team about 5 years ago. I had the Baltimore market, and that was
Oh,
the first
that's all it
Baltimore
is.
market. And that was where I learned about Old Bay. And after that, it was like Old Bay on popcorn, Old Bay on potato chips, Old
Yep.
Bay on,
On
just about
goldfish
anything. Yeah.
crackers. If
I
you ever
love it.
see Old Bay goldfish crackers anywhere, whenever, like every single grocery store I go to, I would habitually tweet them and say, when are they coming back? And then they finally re-released them like a week ago. I did a Google search and I went to their website, and then I did a store locator thing and I found the closest store. I drove 35 miles and I bought 10 bags of them.
I love it.
So
This
as a
episode of the
chef,
Turn 4 podcast brought to you by
I've got
Old Bay
family
Goldfish.
I've got family, from Philly. Obviously, I'm sure I told you guys I was born in Bethlehem. If you
Right.
go back there, the popular, some of the popular dishes are like crab fries,
Yeah.
which is just fries with Old Bay.
That's all
I
that
went
is.
to
Yeah.
a Crab Shack. I don't remember where exactly, but they sell crab wings, which are just chicken wings with Old Bay on them.
It's Chicky Pete's, right? Doesn't Chicky Pete's do
Yeah,
that?
chicken Pete's.
Yeah.
I did want to add, and
Man, I travel too much.
Brian may find this interesting. Not only did Graham fail to qualify 30 years after his dad, that same year you had a Ganassi on the pole, and the winner was from Brazil and started 9th. This year you've got a Ganassi on the pole, and you've got a Brazilian starting 9th in TK. In 93, it was Fittipaldi, and a Brazilian former winner at that.
I love it. Look at that.
Maybe this is an omen.
This is why
Maybe you shouldn't be stubborn and go with your original pick. Maybe you should
Spence,
change
that's
it,
an
Spencer.
insane step.
that is an insane stat. This is why
I-
we've partnered with IndyCar1909.com.
I think what'll happen is sometime in the next few days, I'm gonna get a small inkling of something or whatever, and
Deep dive.
What's that?
Like a deep dive.
Yeah.
You'll get. That's how it happens with me. I don't know how it happens
But-
with you, Spence. We're both obviously in the numbers, but my stuff is I'll just be curious about something, look at it, and then I'm like, oh, well then, and there's this other random thing, and oh, I'll go look at that. Oh,
But
there's another random thing.
I remember I was waiting for an Uber to go to the track in 21, and I like seeing guys win their first 500. I've seen now guys win their first, second, third, or fourth, and I just had this kind of brief thought in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe it'd be cool to see Elio win his fourth.
I love it.
So
Let me know when you get that clairvoyance, because we'll be calling DraftKings or whatever it is. Hey, Brian, who's your pick?
Great question. I'm gonna stick with my original pick, which was Alex Palou.
Oh,
But well, there's always gonna be a but. Everybody's gonna have a but. But like, my original pick was Palou. I do think that he has everything needed to do it. I think he really does, as much as other people might say that he really wants to do it, obviously too, for Chip Ganassi before he leaves. I think there's a little bit of extra motivation there, not that you need it, but he's the points leader now. He's was a points leader going in. But I do, just like we all know, like anything can happen. But like he was dominant last year with Scott Dixon. Like I can't remember off the top of my head how Dixon got ahead of Palou to the point where it was
Palou had a bad
Dixon's
stop at
That's
some
right.
point.
That's right. So he's there, and he doesn't make mistakes. He's literally Scott Dixon Jr. He's got the best starting position. He's got a fast ass car. He's got Honda that can like save mileage when they need to. So I think that it's going to be Alex Palou winning from the pole, just like Simon Pagenaud did in 2019.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I agree with everything you said with regard to who he is and how he comports himself on track and in that car. I'm gonna say this: I still don't buy the fact that he's gonna leave Ganassi at the end of this year. I really don't. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion like everybody else says it is. And I'm also gonna agree with you. He is my winner, my pick for winner. I didn't ask you guys this, so I can go back to this. He is my winner for this thing, and I want to pick a dark horse here. I want to pick Rossi.
I could see it. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, Timmy, who do you got for winning?
I'm going back to my preseason pick, and my preseason pick was done as we were looking at how we rank them for the championship. And so I pulled up my spreadsheet, and the guy that I have winning this is Alex Palou.
No kidding.
No kidding. He's my preseason pick. I don't like to pick the pole winner. As Brian mentioned, the last guy to win it was 2019 with Simon Pagenaud. Before that was Alio in 2009 and Scott Dixon in 2008.
Yeah, it's very
otherwise, wins have come from throughout the field, but in the last 6 years, it's come from the first 8 spots. So, you got to be up in that area, I think, to take the win. But Rossi won last time from in 16 from place 11. So,
you want to give me a dark horse real quick?
My dark horse is just pure. It'd be so great to see as Santino Ferrucci.
Oh my God. Spencer, you got a dark horse for me?
Before all this, I would have said VK. I don't know if you can call somebody who's starting on the front row a dark horse.
You can't. You can't. That's not allowed.
I'll allow it.
Let me take a look at the grid here.
Brian, who do you like as a dark horse?
So as a dark horse, in my opinion, like especially now that I'm doing the projection, like after qualifying, would be I really am interested to see what Kyle Kirkwood does as the first Honda. That is not a Ganassi. And I'm a big Kyle Kirkwood fan, but so I'm looking at Kirkwood and I'm looking at McLaughlin right next to him. But I really think Kyle Kirkwood as a dark horse. He was fast in practice. He was fast in no toes. He was fast in toe speeds. Like he's got a fast car. He's the fastest Andretti. He's the fastest Honda that isn't a Ganassi.
It's got to stay together between the ears.
Exactly.
Home. Yeah. Just so you know, well, I don't want to say this because I don't want to, taint Spencer's dark horse pick. Spence, you got one for me?
you know what? Screw it. I was born in Bethlehem. I'd love to see it. He's,
You're going
you know,
middle Andretti,
he's in the
aren't
middle
you?
of the pack, but
Don't do Marco Andretti. Don't do Marco Andretti.
He's going to do
too
it,
late.
isn't he?
Doing it.
Don't say it.
Marco.
Don't say it out loud.
I'm going to say this out loud, and I'm not going to go back, but I'm just going to tell you, I've sat here the entire time. I sat here all day long preparing for this show to tell you that Palou was my pick for winner, and that Power was going to be my dark horse, and I changed it to Rossi right here.
Nice.
So
I'm
I
just glad
hope
you
that
didn't
I'm
say
not-
Marco Andretti.
No, I would
I don't
believe
know.
if you go back and listen to old shows, you'd know I'd never say it.
I don't know how
So-
you can classify two guys that have won the race and are starting within the four
I
rows
know as a
dark
dark horse.
horses, though.
Yeah,
Like I said,
know.
I
You're right. You're right.
you know,
Does
I mean,
Santino count?
my dark horse ended up qualifying on the front row.
God, I would think Santino counts only because of the expectations out of Foyt here. So
I agree.
think like, you know, a couple weeks ago, you could have
Mhm.
classified him as a dark horse. Because I had him like qualifying 20 something, and Bryan was like, you have a lot of faith in him. And last year it was the opposite, where Bryan was higher on Ferrucci than I was. And you know, Ferrucci started doing well for Dreyer and Reinbold. So I messaged him like after a day or two of practice. I'm like, hey, I may have to eat some crow or owe you a beer. And so, you know,
Yeah,
but-
we've definitely gone back and forth about Ferrucci, but
Yeah.
I
and
think
then,
that it's
so,
like they have solid cars. They have fast cars. Oh, well, I'll say this: they have fast cars.
they do have fast cars. We'll see how solid they
can
are.
hang their head
Yeah.
on that. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So I told Bryan we may have to buy each other beer, or we may have to track down Santino Ferrucci and get his Venmo and just have him buy us the beer.
Right. Yeah. Real quick, like crazy stuff about Ferrucci. I'm sure you guys know this, but
good
like
luck
in
getting
his,
him to respond to your messages. But go ahead.
but in his 4 starts, he's a plus 53. He's never finished lower than he started. He's in all 4 of his starts, he's finished in the top 10. Like his numbers are crazy.
Yeah,
Like really good.
talented.
for,
There's no
like,
doubt.
Yeah, and he just keeps it clean, which is the craziest thing, because if you listen to Connor Daly, Alexander Rossi, like Joseph Newgarden, if you
Character.
listen to, like they don't want to race around him,
Mhm.
which is odd to me because he finishes every lap.
Yeah.
Like he's finished all 800 laps. Like he's not, you know, granted, maybe on ovals and streets, he's might be a little wild cardy, but like at Indy, he's really good. And
Yeah.
like there's no debating that. And I think Foyt saw that, and I think that's why they hired him. And I think they have a great hire in that, and they got a great hire in Michael Cannon. They have a combination that honestly has a shot at winning the Indy 500. AJ Foyt has a shot at winning the Indy 500, and that's crazy.
Definitely a shot. Definitely a shot.
Mhm.
Hey, don't forget to catch up on the stories from the weekend and this coming week. And, you know, with our web partner, IndyCar 1909, I'm going to thank Spencer for joining us. He puts loads of good stuff out there and is updated very regularly. And especially as Spencer is dedicating so much time being on the ground at IMS during this month of May. I can't thank Bryan enough for taking the time and spending time with us and sharing your knowledge and your passion for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. If you're not following Bryan at 500 Indy 1911, you're missing out on a lot of good stuff there. I would encourage you to do that. Gentlemen, that is all for today. I am looking forward to a great week. I am looking even more so to a great Indy 500. I'll not be there. I'll be sitting in a lawn chair watching it at my favorite campground, and I am looking forward to doing that. Bryan, I hope that you'll come back and talk to us after the 500 and give us a couple of things on the double points and how that compares to the situation with double points and now that we're out of them. So I hope.
Yeah,
that you'll come
definitely. It'll
back
be
and
my
give
pleasure.
us
I
some
could do
there.
that. Yep.
Yeah. Spencer, enjoy the week in Indianapolis, and you know, we'll be in touch. Of course, I'll be texting you random things as I normally do, and that's it. Timmy,
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Timmy, you got anything for me?
I'm all good. It's been great having you both on the show. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's time. Can't wait for the Indy 500 showing up here in a few more days. We'll have lots to talk about afterwards.
Yeah. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.